Testing. At last, we are starting to see some prominent Republicans, both elected and out of office, finally call out Donald Trump for his extraordinarily corrupt order to the Justice Department to pay him $230 million of taxpayer money. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, got a couple of clips to play. I want to start here to kind of whet your appetite with Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, my state, who is leaving office at the end of his term, which is January 2027. He's not seeking re-election in the 2026 midterm, so he has a bit more liberty to call balls and strikes. I wish he would do it more, but at least here he's calling out the terrible optics of what Trump is doing.
Well, it seems odd, and I think he's in the difficult position where he's asking for something that he would approve. I think it's terrible optics.
Do you have any issues with the $230 million ask that Trump had to the Justice Department for his legal bills?
I want to find out more about it because I don't know what the details are.
The president had asked the Justice Department to pay for his legal bills with taxpayer money, $230 million. Are you okay with that?
You're telling me this right now, Manu. Can I kind of track it down? So before I comment, let me read that on my own.
Okay. So the last two, Bill Cassidy, Republican senator from Louisiana. The second one is John Cornyn from Texas. Both of them cowards. They're seen as moderates, but they're cowards and losers, certainly compared to Thom Tillis, who is at least upfront enough to say, yeah, it's weird and it doesn't look good, which again, I think, understatement of the century, but at least it's something. And they're not alone, or rather, Thom Tillis is not alone. Republicans out of office, prominent ones, in the National Review, which is a more right-wing publication than the Wall Street Journal, are calling this out as well. We'll start with the editorial board of
that he would approve. I think it's terrible optics.
Do you have any issues with the $230 million ask that Trump had to the Justice Department for his legal bills?
I want to find out more about it because I don't know what the details are.
The president had asked the Justice Department to pay for his legal bills with taxpayer money, $230 million. Are you okay with that?
You're telling me this right now, Manu. Can I kind of track it down? So before I comment, let me read that on my own.
Okay. So the second Republican senator was Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who is facing re-election against a much more openly MAGA challenger, Ken Paxton. Doesn't excuse Cornyn's fecklessness here. He's a coward. He's just seen more of a moderate than somebody like Ken Paxton. Same thing with Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. He was the third one. He is also seen as a moderate, but ultimately a coward when it comes to Donald Trump. He was the guy, by the way, that was ultimately pressured despite enormous misgivings, and he's a doctor, he's a physician, into backing the confirmation of RFK Jr., which he has since come to regret. But those two are particular cowards. At least Thom Tillis feels comfortable enough to call it what it is, which is weird and bad optics. I would say that's still an understatement. It's incredibly corrupt. But it just goes to show that cowardice is in short supply in the Republican Party. Thom Tillis is a rare exception of somebody who's willing to call it out just a little bit. And I do want to turn to the editorial board, I should say, of the National Review, which is a more right-wing publication than the Wall Street Journal. They're one of the most prominent in the country. They're even more conservative than the WSJ. And their editors, the editorial board, is like, yeah, this isn't good. Trump should drop his damages claims against the DOJ. So let's take a look. Donald Trump is in the odd position, by his own admission, of, quote, suing myself. It's a case he should drop. In 2023, 2024, at the height of anti-Trump lawfare, Trump reached for whatever legal levers he could grasp to fight back. This included filing administrative claims against the Justice Department for alleged violation of his rights by the FBI in the Russiagate investigation and the search of Mar-a-Lago. The legal strength of these claims, which were always beside the point, were questionable, even where Trump had some legitimate bases to complain of ill treatment. The government has many defenses to such suits. At the time, however, Trump was a private citizen with federal, state, and local authorities arraigned against him, so a counteroffensive made a certain kind of sense, even when the odds were long. The administrative process is a first step required before filing suit if the agency denies the claim. Like a lawsuit, it can be settled for cash, for an apology, for promises to mend the agency's ways, or some other combination of remedies. Trump asked for $230 million. Now, any settlement would be approved and paid by the same DOJ that answers to Trump himself. Trump acknowledged when pressed by reporters that, quote, "It's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself." Trump says that, quote, "I'm not looking for money," but anything else he could ask for, public vindication, the firing of misbehaving agents, changes in how DOJ and FBI do business, he has either obtained by winning re-election and ending the cases against him, or can obtain by his position overseeing the Justice Department. Using a Trump-ordered settlement to issue a non-monetary mea culpa would be a pointless act of bureaucratic ventriloquism. So it comes to money, which Trump doesn't need and which would be obscene to shell out in any non-trivial amount on the taxpayer's dime. The only proper end is for Trump to declare victory and abandon the claims. The genius of our constitutional system is how many abuses it limits by separating powers. But this is the sort of ethical conflict that cannot be eliminated by procedure. Sometimes our system actually needs leaders to act ethically. That's funny. Sometimes our system actually needs leaders to act ethically and can punish them only through political processes. This is one of these situations. Trump should do the right thing, both ethically and politically, and stop suing himself. So again, a bit more tempered language, I imagine, than if Barack Obama had done this or Joe Biden had done this, but I do appreciate that they're calling this out. I think it's hilarious that they're urging Trump to act ethically when he is by far the least ethical president in American history, morally inferior by far to any Democrat. There's also this. DOJ potentially paying Trump $230 million would be an uncommonly open form of a common scandal. It's by Dan McLaughlin, one of the more prominent Republican writers of the National Review. According to a report in the New York Times, Donald Trump filed 2 administrative claims in 2023 and 2024, threatening to sue the Justice Department and asking for $230 million in compensation over alleged violation of his rights in the Russiagate probe, which led to no charges against him, and the 2023 FBI search of Mar-a-Lago, which led to his indictment. So, he's right about the irregularity of this, and he really ought to either abandon the claims or, at a minimum, abandon any demand for personal compensation. The Times says the claims involve, quote, potential ethical conflicts created by installing the president's former lawyers atop the Justice Department. But that understates the case. Even if the DOJ was run by people of unimpeachable integrity with no personal relationship with Trump, its senior leadership still knows perfectly well that Trump hired them and can fire them, and that they answer to Trump and are obligated to do so. Although the legal merits of a lawsuit in this situation may be dubious, it's not necessarily unethical for Trump to have filed these claims. He was a private citizen at the time, after all. But signing off on a settlement that raids the federal treasury to pay the president would be scandalous. It's actually a more common variety of scandal than you might think, although in true Trumpian fashion, it would be unusually open in its corruption. So again, he's acknowledging this is corrupt. There's a long and dolorous history of government law offices from the DOJ on down to local governments acting in collusive fashion to give money to friends and allies that they could not get through legislature as an appropriation, or to agree to consent decrees and other court orders that bind the government in ways that could not get through a legislature as laws. That may not be as openly unethical a practice as literally forking over taxpayer cash to the guy running the government, but it's really just a smoother way of abusing the adversarial legal system, whose basic premise is that one side isn't throwing the game. And it's one that the activist left has perfected over the years. Remember, this is a conservative publication. Paying Trump $230 million would stink on ice, and even the possibility of that happening should make us think more skeptically about other forms of collusive settlements. So again, he's calling this out as well. But again, unfortunately, we're not seeing much by way of profiles and courage, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to end on a bit of a sour note here. I want to play you 2 clips of the most powerful, at least on paper, Republican official in the legislature, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson. So 2 days, 2 separate clips. Here was him first being asked about this scandal, this open corruption of Trump demanding taxpayer funds to the tune of $230 million to be paid to him.
How comfortable are you with the president apparently seeking $230 million from the Department of Justice?
I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that. I know that he believes he's owed that reimbursement. What I heard yesterday was if he receives it, he was going to consider giving it to charity. I mean, he doesn't need those proceeds, but we're for the rule of law. We're for what is just and right. And it's just absurd that, I mean, as has been noted here several times this morning, they attack him for everything he does. It doesn't matter what it is. This whole dust up about the White House, just by way of quick review, because I'm an amateur.
So again, he totally sidesteps the issue and goes back to the ballroom. It's like they attack him for everything. It's ridiculous. So they attack him for, ordering the Justice Department to pay him $230 million of taxpayer money. Like, as if we would be upset about that if the shoe were on the other foot. Yeah, you would, asshole. You would. You're such an unprincipled, hypocritical loser. So that was him saying, look, I just heard about this. I have nothing for you. Well, then he was asked about it the next day.
You said yesterday you were still trying to get the details of this $230 million the president has asked for the Justice Department to pay for his legal bills. Now that you've had some time, perhaps, to get the details, are you okay with taxpayers potentially being on the hook for that kind of money?
I'm not trying to dodge the question. I haven't had time to get the details. Okay, that's still on my list, things to do list. Yesterday was almost literally a 21-hour workday. Yes.
So again, even Mike Johnson I'm not trying to dodge the question. Bro, you are dodging the question. You are so feckless, so transparent. The fact of the matter is, folks, that you'll have some prominent Republicans on the outside and maybe one or two on the inside call this out. But they all know it's shamelessly corrupt. And if the shoe were on the other foot, if a Democratic politician were as uniquely morally inferior as what you see from the Republicans, and they're just not, the worst, the very worst Democratic politician is morally superior to the very best Republican politician, certainly in the federal government. But even if you were to see this from the Democrats, a Democratic president, the Republicans who need all the details would be openly condemning it. You wouldn't need to ask them twice. You probably wouldn't need to ask them at all. They would be in unison. And quite frankly, most Democrats would as well. That's the difference between the two parties. The Democratic Party has its problems, and Democratic politicians are far from perfect and can be constructively criticized, should be constructively criticized, but they're not a corrupt, authoritarian cult of personality, which is unfortunately what the GOP has become. And it says something that the only prominent elected Republican who has dared call this out is the one who says, yeah, I'm not seeking re-election and I'm out the door in 2027. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.